Prop 8 for me is more about, and I wish you would have phrased it this way, is more about gender equality versus gay marriage. The bottom line is there are people who don't fit within the binary gender spectrum on one end or the other, and it would be, this guy's talking about gender, and frankly, if I wanted to marry somebody right now as a pre-op, I would have to marry a genetic female, a born female. Mm-hmm. Anybody sees this out in public, they see two women together, we're holding hands, we're kissing, they don't know anything about that. So this isn't even about gender. This is about the government controlling who can marry whom of what physical sex. Gender is completely, not even in the conversation. Right, exactly. And so you don't really know what's under someone's, skirt or jeans or dress pants or whatever. And if that's going to be the basis on which that we define marriage legally as a society, well, we already have the terms all screwed up, and it's kind of hard to sort of clear the air when we're not really even sure what we're talking about here. So. Right. Yeah, I think Bo would. Yeah, I set you up for that.
I'd like to make a point about what Bednar says. He says that there would be decreasing tolerance for the Mormon Church. Well, I'll just say the Mormon Church generally. That's happened before. The Mormons have a history of being discriminated against, if you will, and suffering social pressures against them. And you know what they did? They said that God decided that they needed to change their laws. They've done it before. They can do it again.
Right.
Good point.
Right. Well, it's just ironic that a group of people who would twist the concept of marriage would then attempt to define it for everybody else. That's really the bottom line. It's the pot in the kettle.
Yeah, it's funny that some of them would say that the slippery slope could lead to legalization of polygamy.
Imagine that. Hey, maybe that's the goal. Who knows? I'm not Mormon. Is anybody in this room Mormon? What do we know? But.
I don't think I think the Mormons are good people. I've known many of them, but
it's about the leadership.
Hypocrisy is very high here.
Yeah, it's about the leadership.
Yeah. Okay. Now this next comment he has is something about. He's asserting that if Prop 8. He's being interviewed here last year, last year after the decision had already been made. So I think, actually it's probably this year, because he was earlier talking about that the decision had been made in 2008, and then there's a Supreme Court challenge, California. So this must have been recorded about May of this year or something. His next thing is to say, there's no loss of rights for the gay community here if they were to, in the passage of Prop 8, and also, if it were not to have passed, there's this uncertainty, and that's a risk, and it's a very vague comment. I want you to listen to how he phrases, and just basically demagogues uncertainty, slippery slope. Let's see what he.
It's not as though they have rights or responsibilities or benefits that will be removed. This is simply an attempt to have the definition of marriage expanded to include same-gender couples. But they would lose nothing.
And they don't get any new rights from this at all. It's just the title that they're given if Prop 8 does not pass.
Well, what you do is you redefine marriage. And then the uncertainty is what happens as people begin to push the limits of that new definition. That's the uncertainty that poses a real risk.
So if it wasn't to pass, with the ability for us to, to live a religion or to preach a religion, could we not do that anymore?
Yeah, that's why I use the concept of the tyranny of tolerance.
Right.
It seems to be tolerant, but it only goes in one direction.
Right.
So you're going to have the possibility of inevitable clashes between religious liberty and free speech. And if your religious doctrine is such that you believe marriage between a man and a woman is the only definition of marriage, then that smacks up against free speech. Because if marriage is defined in a more broad way between members of the same gender, then you can't talk about that. Now,
can I put this as simply as possible?
Yeah.
This is so easy. There was no constitutional definition of the word marriage prior to this. If anything, the violation of the First Amendment, and I'm sure Michael will back me up on this, comes from the Mormon Church, who's attempting to put a religious definition on a legal concept that has previously not been defined. Sorry, being interrupted by the waiter here. Has not previously been defined.
Right.
And so to say that these rights have not been stripped is absolutely false. They were never granted, and this is okay, they have not been stripped, but they have by defining marriage, there's a wall. They've built a wall. They haven't taken anything from you, but they built a wall and said, we have this and we don't want to share it with you.
Right. This is the first fallacy, is that, you're not losing anything. Of course, you're still way behind.
Thanks, sir.
And then the other part is the slippery slope of it. So if, Bo, you could address both of those. First, his argument that, you're not losing anything. And then second is, our free speech will then be curtailed. They could come in, and as soon as a Mormon priest says something, in a ceremony, they're going to take him off in shackles.
He's partially right and partially wrong. In states where gay marriage was not allowed, he's right. Gay people lost nothing. They were still being discriminated against. Things weren't any worse for them. But in states that had passed laws legalizing same-sex marriage and such, yes, they would definitely lose something. So his answer is really I don't know, what's the word? Is it disingenuous? He's ignoring the fact that some states already legalized same-sex marriage, and yes, those people would lose something.
Yep. That's true. Okay.
So what he's doing is he's defining the playing field, and he's defining it according to the Book of Mormon, not according to the U.S. Constitution.
Okay. One last thing I want to play for him is the addressing of the children issue, because the children and how all this would be perceived by the children kept coming up over and over in the campaign. You need it back? Wait till you hear. Wait till you hear what he has to say, and you'll get first chance.
I'm not suggesting that in one fell swoop that's what happens. But if you throw a rock in a pond, the ripples extend out for a very long way. This argument is not just about the rock hitting the water and the initial ripple. You have to also consider the extended ripples over time. And you get some sense of what can happen by looking in other places, in other countries, where same-gender marriage has been adopted legally, and you begin to see some of those potential ripples.
So what would the consequences be to the children?
Well, let's say, for example, that if same-gender marriage becomes legally the norm, then it's pretty clear that you're going to have to treat equally in public school curriculum various forms of marriage relationships. Heterosexual marriage and homosexual marriage would have to be treated on equal footing. So what you then will have is an environment where children coming from your home, where you believe that marriage between a man and a woman is ordained of God, and that the family is central to the Father's plan for the divine destiny of his children. Your children will go to school. Those will be placed on equal footing. That to me is a very troubling and uncertain consequence of what we're talking about.
And he goes on to talk about the church's teachings about the sanctity of marriage and how it should be only between a man and woman. So he talks purely about the Mormon religion from here on out. But can you address his assertion that in public schools that then, as they treat marriage, they would then have to treat same-sex marriages equally to hetero marriages?
They don't have to do anything.
And then they would, they
don't have to do anything. All they have to do is accept the children who are the products of these marriages as equal to the children who are products of heterosexual marriages. And going back to the whole binary sex and gender concept, it implies that apparently God has no love for those of us who don't fit into a squarely male or female category, and those of us who are physically born that way. There are people who are born with both sets of genitalia. And I mean, honest to God,